we come a-caroling among the leaves so green. Here we come a-wandering so fair to be seen. Love and joy come to you, and to you glad Christmas too. And God bless you and send you a happy new year. And God send you a happy new year. Deck the halls with boughs of holly, fa la 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 la.
'Tis the season to be jolly. Fa la 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 la.
All right. Yeah. Oops. There we go. I should be able to hear you in Discord chat, and you should be able to hear me through the video. All right, test audio. There we go. Audio is working on the video, just confirmed. And let's see. So I wanted to, before we get to the quiz and everything, I know I've talked about it a fair bit this semester. I wanted to just give you a brief, not even introduction, but sampling, basically, of, 1 second. Okay. Of, actual Android applications and how you would get started. So I'm going to show you a simple application here, and I'm using a library in it called Retrofit, and this is basically a starter application for using that library. So the idea is you have a GitHub repo, and you're declaring it here, and it's going to have a name, and you're going to have a method called getName. Pretty straightforward here. Why we're doing this, it'll become apparent here in a minute. And after I go through this example, I'll actually walk you through how to create your first project. Are there any questions before I get started with that? I'm not hearing anybody speak if they are, or seeing anybody type. Okay. So, the first idea, or the first thing with Retrofit is you create or define a client, and you use these things up here. We briefly touched upon these previously. These are called annotations, and as you can see, the get and path annotation are defined inside Retrofit. And an annotation can go before a method declaration or before a parameter declaration. So here's the annotation, and here's the variable declaration. And we're creating an interface, and we're going to call it GitHub Clients. And so as this project, as you can see, all it does is it goes and gets a list of my publicly available GitHub repositories, and it lists them. And how it does that is we have a method called user repos, and we're going to use the path here, user, and we're going to pass in this user value into this template thing here. Like, there's a lot of magic hand waving going on here, so when I try to say thingy here, it's because I'm trying to not get too deep into the weeds. But basically, this user will be substituted into this URL portion here and used later in the next class we're going to look at. So when you call user repos with, let's say, my username, which is M.A. Walker, it substitutes M.A. Walker into that part there. Does that make sense to everybody? It's not terribly difficult. It's just not what I would consider clear the first time you're looking at it. I am not hearing, if somebody's speaking, I'm not hearing you. One second. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, muting on your mic doesn't actually mute. Yeah, muting on your headset technically always isn't fully muted, which is a weird thing. But it's fine. I just was hearing little like whispers basically, and I wanted to make sure I was catching somebody if they were talking. So I can ignore it. It's not a problem. So first of all, we have the repo here, which has a name, and we have a client which uses or returns a call of a list of repos, which we'll explain what that is here in a second. And then we have a service generator, and this has a bunch of stuff in it that honestly, even a lot of this is sort of just boilerplate to me. I'm not super familiar with Retrofit. I'm actually, ironically, more familiar with the underlying library that Retrofit uses called HTTP, OKHTTP, instead of using the Retrofit, basically wrapper around it to make it supposedly easier. But what the point of this is sort of to show you how deep and convoluted some libraries can get. But more importantly is if you start seeing some key words that you're and patterns that we've talked about in the beginning of and throughout the this course, it'll make what's actually happening make more sense. So here's our base API URL. So this is a public URL that GitHub provides. It's api.github.com. We're going to make a client. We're going to call that, it's going to be an instance of the OKHTTP client builder. And you'll see that it's used later, but that's fine. It calls builder. We're going to get the retrofit builder, and that's going to be used later also. But we're going to configure the retrofit builder with the base URL. And we're going to add a conversion factory, and we're going to create this conversion factory. A Json conversion factory, excuse me, helps in the helps in the serialization and deserialization of objects. So you will get an object and like this GitHub repo, and how do you convert the name or the object returned and get its values out of it. There's actually, when you're using JSON, you can do tricky things like this repository object that's returned as some type of text can have a lot more values in it, but the only one you're using is name. And how you get that is, actually a little, might not as clear as if you were just using HTTP. If you're using OKHTTP, you can manually intercept the raw results easier than what I see here. Oh, interesting. So, but regardless, that's a sidetrack. And then you get your builder for OKHTTP. You add the OKHTTP client to the Retrofit builder, and you build that, and you get your actual Retrofit instance. So, little convoluted, I get it, but it's not terribly difficult if you go line by line and you make sure what each line does. You can, at this point, you all should be able to understand what this code is doing. Mainly, you might not understand why it's doing it like this. You might not understand, but when you're looking at example code and it tells you to put this, you at least will do so. Oh, okay. So this is where you're logging the body of the HTTP response if you're in a debug mode. So, which we are. And you're seeing the raw response here. All of this is what was actually returned and is being parsed into this list of text here. Does it make sense so far what we've been talking about? It's not terribly difficult. It's a little convoluted, but once you sort of understand what's going on, you can start to make sense of what's actually happening. And honestly, I don't remember why this works. Like I said, I'm definitely not an expert in Retrofit at all. I was using this project to learn Retrofit. I'm actually, ironically, way more familiar with OKHTTP, which is more difficult to use, to set up, I'll put it that way. But in practice, using it can be easier in certain ways. It's half a dozen of one, or it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, basically. Retrofit's much more popular. A lot of people don't like taking the time to set up OKHTTP. But once it's set up, I think it's fine. But that's basically this portion of it. And what I wanted to have you understand is here's the service, here's the create service, and it will create the client and use the interceptor. And if it's in debug, which it is, because you can, because I'm building in debug by default. That's just the way it is. Build variants. You come down here. I don't think I've shown you this, but you come down to the bottom left and there's build variants. And by default, you'll have debug and release. Eventually, you'll probably have a lot more variants than that. But for simple projects, you might just only have the two. So we have a service generator. It'll create the the retrofit instance for us, and everything. And here's where you actually use it. And there are benefits to the new way in which Android recommends navigation. I am not a fan of it for new developers in Android. I believe it's overly convoluted to get started, and that there are benefits to it later. I'll put it that way. So, for example, and I think it's really difficult to navigate in my opinion, to convert from the old style with a lot of activities and a lot of fragments to this style quickly. There are benefits to doing so, but it's a lot of effort. So this is a fragment. Fragments live inside activities. Here's our main activity. On create in your main activity, which is, you don't have to name it main activity, but it's the one that's launched when you press the icon. You can, there's lots of hand waving in my description right now, but I just want to breeze over this for you, just to give you a basic idea. Is what will set up your UI, set up the fab, so floating action button, that's this thing down here. Menu options, set up your I actually don't even see. Oh, you set up your nav controller. Your nav controller sets up what fragments are running. So, and you can toggle back and forth between windows. Whoops. Yeah. I don't think this is, I think I ran into an edge case where the result returned after I wasn't on the window, so it crashed. But, anyways, here's the actual code for using, Retrofit. We're going to kind of skip all of this stuff for right now, and we'll come back to it. It's basically how you set up the view. The view is created, you bind it with this code here, and once you create it, you set up like binding if button first, which is this button, and you set an on-click listener, and you set an anonymous inner class or instance or anonymous inner class that implements this interface, and you just have the code there. You see the override annotation, and then you actually do the code that happens when you click the button. If you're looking at it, the code itself is pretty straightforward. Find nav controller for this object, and you navigate to this here. We'll talk about actually, I'll click it right now. This is why the navigation library can be a little wonky, in my opinion. It's great that you have GUI elements like this, but it can get overly cluttered if you have a large, complex content management system, CMS, and then let me rephrase that. It can get visually cluttered. And so what you have to do is make sure to handle the visual and logical clutter properly. And there's a lot of techniques like making nested graphs and some other techniques like that. Basically, I think this feature is slightly immature, and it needs much better options here in the GUI section. One of the specialties of the research institute I was working at as a graduate student, which was ironic. It wasn't named badly when I started, but when I left, the name ISIS didn't mean the same thing anymore. But it's short for Institute for Software Integrated Systems. But they worked a lot on how to model systems and how to visually represent them through utilities such as GME, which is generic modeling environment, and WebGME and things like that. And so I find this rather lacking. But that's my personal aside on it. Let's get back to the GitHub client. So actually using Retrofit isn't that difficult. You have the service generator, you create the service, and you use GitHub client.class. So we come back over here, you declare that, and you now have a GitHub client. You call the client user repos, like we talked about. It's going to pass in the string into here and return a call of a list. It's going to return a list of GitHub repos inside a call. I'm trying to word that better. And that's exactly what you get. And then you enqueue that call and you set a callback listener. When you get a failure, it would do this. And when you get a success, what it'll do is call this code. And here's something I definitely wanted to show to you. String builder. In Java in particular, you, if at all possible, want to avoid things like this where you're concatenating with strings. If you have 2 or 3 plus signs, you want to try to avoid that and move to a string builder. Much, much more memory efficient to do it this way, because every additional plus sign actually creates a location in memory for this size. Then it makes another memory and location for this size, because remember, strings are immutable. So if every time you're going through and you're creating a string that's this long, then this long, then this long, then this long, then this long, it gets really ridiculous. So instead you use a string builder and you append, I guess that isn't even needed, space there, but regardless, you append the repo.getName, and then you append a new line character. If you do that over and over and over, only once do you end up actually creating a full-size string to be displayed here. And nice, as you can see, the set text can take a character sequence. A string builder is a type of character sequence. So under the hood, what it calls is string builder dot build, basically, but it's not actually that, but toString. And it builds the string. But it knows to automatically do that when you pass it in, so you don't have to do that manually. So this is a pretty simple Android application. I just wanted to run through it, see if you guys, or you all, I swear I need to like donate $1 or something every time I say that. But see if you all had any questions regarding this. I know it's a little high level, not that difficult. I'm not asking you to be able to reproduce this. This was just more of a for you to understand. If there's no questions so far, what I'll do is we will go ahead and create a new project. My recommendation is we'll start here. Click next. You set your application name, your package name, your location, a language, minimum API, and you hit finish. I'm not going to change anything just for this sake. Android Studio takes a minute to load, so we'll just wait. But if you're going to start experimenting with Android applications, this would be where I would recommend starting. Just because the navigation library, it is useful and it has its benefits. But for new developers, I think this is just a lot clearer. As you can see, all it does is add an instance or replaces the existing fragment, which there isn't one, into the container and instantiates it in the view. There's more going on, but here's the frame layout in the, you'll see it has the ID container. And there we go. Your view model is empty. Public. Huh. No. Private. Immutable live data. String. I'll explain this here in a second. It'll just be faster if I type it. Alt insert allows you to do the generator here. You can do a generator for this. And what you want to do is return a live data, not a mutable live data. So I just made a super simple view model, and it has a button text, and it's inside what's called immutable live data. I'll explain that here in a second, but essentially just think of it as an object that will notify observers, and observers we'll get to here in a minute. But when this value changes or is initially set, it'll notify observers when they connect or when it's updated. You can get it as a live data, so this reference to it isn't able to change it. But if you want to set the button text, you can do so. So we come here to the main fragment. Look at the main fragment. I like this split layout where you have, oh, perfect. There's already a text view. There's text view message. And what we're going to do is mViewModel, get button text, observe this. Does this not work? Oh, there we go. We'll just leave that as is for now. So, but binding? No. I will just do this the old-fashioned way. Private text view. Text view equals, and the benefit of me doing this faster and not explaining it is we can get it done in time, and you can always go back and rewatch and listen to the explanation. So hope that makes sense. Text view equals view dot find ID r dot id dot message. Text view dot set text is s. S here is a string. S. So run this. And it should pop up with a white screen and just say initial here in the center. Okay, so what I'm doing here is on this line, I'm getting a reference. Good. I know what I'm doing, or at least I can pretend I know what I'm doing when it comes to Android. What I'm doing here is I'm getting a reference to the text view that's declared here in the XML file. This XML file is what is inflated to be the view for this fragment. And I'm getting a reference to the text view here. It by default says main fragment. But what I did was there's a view model here, and the view model has button text here. This is a live data. It's a type of, actually, I don't know if live data, implements view model or observable, or I like to, yeah, it's an observer. Can be added to it. But you add an observer to it. Here's the lifecycle owner, and here's the code that is added, or code that is processed or /ran when the button text is updated. And what it does is it uses S, which new button text. let's rename it something meaningful. And that's a good tip. Whenever you have short code like that, try to rename it to something meaningful, because in 5 minutes I might forget what S is there. I might be able to figure out its text, or a string, but just a helpful reminder type of thing. And I'm setting the text view, which is this, to what the value was on get button text, and the initial is that. Now, oops. Post delayed. Runnable. 4,000. We've talked about runnables before in Java. This we'll cover here in a second, but this is basically the fancy way of getting a thread to run a runnable on the main thread. So 1 second. Runnable equals new runnable. View model dot set button text updated. Also in Android, you would never, you should never have strings like this. You should always extract them out. Oops. You would do a better name of the variable, but you would do something like this, and you'd come over here and you see there's a string here in an XML file, and you reference it dynamically this way. The purpose of this is internationalization, so that you can have different files with all your text in here, and you have one for English, one for Spanish, maybe one for British English, one for American English, etc. And all you have to do is swap out which one of these files is loaded. And so therefore the rest of your app just auto-magically has updated text. So, something else to bring up. We have about 10 minutes left before I want to get to the quiz. Does all of this make sense, what I've done so far? Let's go ahead and run this and see what it does. Hopefully, in 4 seconds, it's going to say updated. There we go, updated. Does that make sense to everybody? As you can see, here's the runnable that we talked about previously. We talked a little bit about the view model concept as a design pattern. And it's really nice because now we come back to main view model, and we can make a test for this. In the test folder, not Android test. And the difference between these is Android test generally requires a runtime of you running the application, where test can just run in JUnit easily. Test. Actually, I guess we do have JUnit. Anyways, let's just try this. Test JUnit. Test. Do a sanity check, make sure things work. That's one of the biggest takeaways I can give you for when it comes to testing. Test something like this first. Make sure it even works, because I have written like oops, just an obscene amounts of lines of code like that. And all of this would just, I'm like, why isn't it working? Why is it failing? And it wasn't the test failing. It was the testing framework failing. So always make sure you do a sanity check. Make sure your test works. And main view model m equals new view model. What you would do is main view model set button text test assert equals expected test main main view model dot get button text. We run both of these and they should both pass. Oh, nope. Oh, wait. I made a boo-boo. Well, I think I know the error here is I need to get a runner that runs instantaneously. So technically there's a delay here. Should have grabbed this before. Let me see if I can find it. 1 second. Sorry about that. Ooh. Oh. That's Kotlin. Well, let's just do it this way. I'll just convert this entire thing to Kotlin. Yeah, I didn't think so. So, oh well. This would work, I'm pretty sure. I just need to get that instant task executor rule to work. I need some import on my dependencies to get that library. But you understand the concept, and here's Kotlin of the same unit test we were doing. We can just run this back. If you're interested in learning Kotlin, when I recommend you are, it's a pretty nice language once you get used to it. All you have to do is hit Control-Shift-Alt-K, and it'll give you a prompt to convert your Java code into Kotlin. And you can convert back immediately if you try, in a lot of instances. But if you're using Git, I would recommend committing and saving your state before then. That's just a lot. I know that was a quick, just brief introduction to Android. Just wanted to make sure everyone understood some of that. It was pretty quick. This view model we've talked about, it's pretty straightforward. Here's the actual data. Here's its initialization value. Here's the getter and the setter. Come down to the main fragment. You get the text view, you find it, you save a reference to it, you get the view model, you get the getter for the live data, you observe it. When the value changes, you update the text view. And then here, all we're doing is we're creating a runnable to be updating the view model's button text, and then we're posting it to basically the main thread. This is a lot of syntax sugar to say the main thread of the Android application. But it uses loopers instead of regular simple threading that you're used to in Java. Are there any questions? That was pretty quick, but I think if you go through the file, main, and new project, come all the way down here to fragment plus view model, I think you'll be able to get started and be able to produce a lot of this. What I'll go ahead and do is I will figure out what the remainder of the code is to get this unit test working. And I will add that in the description of this video or a comment or something. And also I'll post it in class chat. So you'll have access to that. Otherwise, basically we're done with classes for the semester. What will happen from here is Thursday you'll have your exam. I do have a question. Would people prefer a 510 to 625 exam, or would you prefer a Thursday and do it Friday at midnight exam? I can craft the exam to be either. I'm just curious what people would prefer. Okay, I'm seeing most people are in favor of the longer period. Okay. I know people are really liking these more open-ended sections, so those are a little more difficult to do in a limited time space. So, all right, we will go ahead and do that then. Here at 6. Yeah, that's fine. We'll go ahead and do that then. And here at 6, which is in a minute, your quiz for this class, which will cover chapters 9 and 10, I believe. But regardless, it's 2 chapters. I'll have your grade for the quiz here hopefully by Friday. You should be able to see the true false portions Actually, I'll have it done by Thursday. Now that I think about it, you'll need to review that for the exam. So I'll have that done before class on Thursday. And then that should be it. I hope everybody's having a decent enough time with the final project. It isn't actually that difficult. You just need to sit down and start doing it. Even if you don't quite understand it, just start getting the code into the project. And the act of doing that, I believe, will be informative and educational enough to teach you the concepts. So, make sure, if you haven't found a partner and you're looking for one, talk in the chat. Remember, individual or up to 2 people on a project. Some of the individuals in this class, because I've been talking about it long enough, have already done a significant portion of getting that code into a project. So hopefully that should... Can somebody check to make sure the quiz is visible? You don't have to start it immediately. I just want to make sure it's visible. It should tell you due by midnight or 11:59 this evening. Just want to make sure it's visible to the students. But you should be able to get some pretty good progress. And ironically, if you can get a working graph example like this, then the remainder of your classes will be much easier, because many upper division classes make use of graphs, and having this would make it much easier. Okay, good. You can see the quiz. But having a graph implementation that works with breadth first search and depth first search will be very beneficial to you. So hopefully that will pay dividends further in your classes too. Remember, I'm generally 24/7 available on the chat. I just won't get to it if I'm asleep, etc. But message me if you have any questions, and I'll go ahead and let you go for now in the class, and then I guess we can go ahead and have class on Thursday, and see if there's any questions anybody has not related exactly to the exam. And then the rest of the class period will be self-study / exam time. So I will see you all on Thursday. Y'all come back now one more time. Otherwise, you have a good evening and stay safe out there.